Welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur Unleashed. I'm so happy you guys are here because today in the studio, I'm joined by Danny Wax, and we're going to jump into his story because his story is going to transform your life. I know it. But before we do that, I just want to remind you that today is a day about you. It's an opportunity to give you the chance to just learn vicariously through the stories of others. You see, I believe the best way to shortcut your journey of success is literally to make sure that you're making the right steps. And the best way to find that out is to look at the footsteps of those that have gone through what you're going through and have made it through to the other side. So welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Edward Collins, and I can't wait to jump into Danny's story. Danny, thank you so much for coming here today.
Thanks for having me.
100%. Now, I know that you know a little bit about the show and you know how it goes. I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions and we'll see how that entire experience goes. Does that sound fair?
Fire away.
Wonderful. Well, what I'd like to do is I know a little bit about your story, but the audience may not. So I want to find out a little bit more about where you are right now. What are you doing today from a business standpoint? And then we can talk a little bit about the journey getting there. Does that sound fair?
Definitely.
Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing right now.
So today I run a company called Scale Up, founder and CEO. And what we do is two things. We are your one-stop shop for all technology needs in creating your sales. So if you are spending time prospecting, if you do not have a sales team, if you want to work on your business and not in your business, we help founders implement the right tools with the right messaging and help them create their brand online.
Okay.
But
you're working directly with founders.
Yep. We work predominantly with people who are self-employed, have their first 10 to 15 clients, know they're ready to start moving to the next level, or it's the people who have a team of 1 to 10 salespeople, really, and we're really putting in the process that's going to help them make it scalable and repeatable to grow.
Okay. And how long have you been doing this particular position?
I've been doing this now about a year and a half.
Okay. And what do you like about it?
The number one thing I like is the challenge.
Okay.
So while everything that I've done in the past, which we'll learn, has been rinse, repeatable, it's done the same way every time. I'm someone who always loves a challenge in life. I want to constantly be challenged and growing and moving my brain. And so with this one, it's that I know all of the tools out there. I know the best ways to use them. I know the best ways to set up a CRM, to set up a LinkedIn profile, to get your Instagram going, to make it so that you're seen on all three by the same exact people.
Okay.
But each business is different. So with each business, with this one, I get to go in and I get to talk with the leadership, understand their goals, their objectives, and challenge them and their ideals. And they say, we want to do it this way. And then it's, how's that been working for you?
Danny, that's one of the things I love about what your story is. It's so much in alignment with what I do. So both of us, we're entrepreneurs. We've built and scaled businesses. We've been through the mud, definitely through the mud and muck, and made it out not always clean on the other side, right? We had to wash off. But now what we are also doing now is we're helping other business owners do the same thing. Now you're specializing in one area, I specialize in another, but at the end of the day, not only do we have our own experience that we can relay and share, but we're now all collecting other people's experiences as well. And that breadth of experience and knowledge is something that adds value to the people that we serve. So that's awesome. But I know that this isn't where you've always been. You've been through a lot over the course of your years as an entrepreneur. So let's journey a little bit back in time. Let's talk a little bit about how you actually got started as being an entrepreneur in the first place.
Yeah. So I come from an entrepreneurial family.
Okay.
My dad has run his own law firm since he was in his early 30s.
Okay.
And always did well for us. So grew up pretty well off. And then when I turned 16, that's when my entrepreneurial journey started and when I found my mission, actually.
Okay.
So at 16 years old, a friend of mine approached me and he said, hey, I've got one school already interested. We're going to call this Miami Youth Empowerment. We're going to start a nonprofit and we're going to go to all the inner city K through 8 schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and provide after-school tutoring,
in Miami-Dade?
In Miami-Dade.
Okay.
We ended up partnering up with Miami-Dade County with the superintendent and expanded to about 8 of the schools in Overtown, Liberty City, others.
Okay.
In just those 2 years that were left in high school when I was doing it.
Wow.
And found my mission to be making education accessible because nothing in life is achievable if you can't be educated about it.
100%. I agree with that. When you talk about that experience, so you were 16 when this was going on. Now, who came up with the idea? It was your friend that came up with the idea?
My friend Nick came up with it.
Okay.
And he, weirdly enough, he's actually a tech entrepreneur now too.
Okay. Well, the apple's not far from the tree, right? You both are growing up with the same mentality, same mindset. When you look at your youth, though, so you say you grew up in Miami, yep. And you're from a reasonably well-off family. You had reasonable resources growing up.
And I say that for good reason. I don't say that just to say it. We'll go into why.
Okay, let's talk about that then. Tell me a little bit about what your reason is for sharing it that way.
Yeah, so I share it that way because at 18 years old, I went to college, and when I was 18 years old, my first semester, I partied like every college kid did, and I left a club with a drink in my hand. And a cop stopped me, and I was arrested and kicked out of college.
Oh my goodness!
At that point in time,
for just carrying a drink,
fake ID.
Okay, it was all that, all the above.
All the above,
okay.
all the above. And my parents, when it happened as well, they said, "You're cut off. Figure it out."
Okay. As an 18-year-old.
As an 18-year-old.
Wow.
And I needed to, and the court said, in order to dismiss your charges, for you to have a clean record. Do pretrial diversion, go to an inpatient rehab for 30 days.
Okay.
I ended up staying for 65.
Wow.
And it was my choice.
Okay.
Not because I saw a problem in myself. I know I have an addictive personality, but not because I saw a problem in what I was channeling that towards, because I was channeling it towards good things. What I saw was the insights that it gave me into myself.
Okay.
And the reasons why I took certain actions and the self-awareness that it gave me. I wanted to continue to do that.
Interesting.
And after those 2 months passed, my parents and I still didn't talk. We didn't talk for about a year. And I lived in a 3-quarter-way house at 18 years old with 6 heroin addicts.
Okay.
Got a job in commission-only sales and started to learn how to sell. That was the first
definitely
skill.
Unpack that a bit. Like, what type of sales was this?
So this was B2B sales. It was a commission-only role, no technology in the business, where basically we were a middleman reselling any promotional items, custom tap handles, custom point-of-purchase displays to breweries and spirits.
I've had a discussion with another business owner, and we were talking about sales experience as a youth and how that was pivotal to their success in business today. Tell me a little bit about what you think the role of sales is and how important or not important it is.
I think sales is the number one skill that anyone can learn who does not want to be a doctor, does not want to be a lawyer, does not want to go down a path that you need to get a PhD or a JD in or go to that level of school. Sales is going to be the number one skill.
Don't you think sales, though, would be good for a doctor to learn, too?
I think it's amazing.
Because my position is that no matter what you're doing in life,
you're
selling something. You're selling yourself, a service, or a product. So if you can learn those skills, you can get significant benefits, not just in the moment, but over the course of your life.
Oh, 100%. Okay. 100%. I'm more so saying it shouldn't be the first focus if you're doing that.
I get it.
But with sales, completely agree. I think it's the lifeblood of anything. Because all sales is, if we break it down, is making friends, identifying problems, coming up with a solution that you both think will win, and figuring out the number that works best.
Yes.
That's all sales is. So if you break it down, one, making friends, well, humans are social beings at our core. If we're not talking to people, if we're not around people, our body starts to not like what's going on. We see negative effects, and our brain status actually starts to change. We see less activity happening scientifically.
Okay.
So one, we need to make friends in order to do that. That's part of who humans are.
Exactly.
Number two, identifying problems. It goes back to life when I was 18 years old. You have to be able to identify problems in order to grow from it and reach the goals that you want. So for other people, let's just identify those problems and talk about it. It's having a conversation. Solving the problem, that's just ideating and coming up with solutions. People do this every day, coming up with who's the greatest of all time in the NBA.
Right.
It's the same thing. Just how are you going to do it? How are you going to break down the metrics? How are you going to solve the solution? How do you measure it? And then lastly, figuring out the numbers. Have a conversation. If you're just starting out in your business, for example, or if you're trying to sell in the beginning, the first people that you talk to don't come with one number right away. Come with an idea in mind, but be willing and open to understand what they value it at, because you still need to find that product market fit.
When I look at the concept of numbers and understanding that, you definitely need to recognize that there's a difference between price and value. because price is what people are going to pay, but value is what they get. Value is a perception, so it's your job as the salesperson to make sure that they perceive the value in what you're offering. I love that. From an experience standpoint, at such a young age, you jumped into the concept of sales and started cutting your teeth, and that was B2B. How did you find that? Like, what was that experience like?
So I'm someone who growing up was told, you're annoying, you're talkative, and really it was just that I grew up being taught, Danny, talk to everyone, ask whatever questions you want to ask. There's nothing that you say that is wrong, and if there is, you'll learn that yourself.
Well, that's a great lesson for any parent to learn, to teach their kids. It's great to ask questions. It's great to be inquisitive. This is something I think it was either a study or maybe it was an episode on something that was talking about how many times an average child hears the word no. It's like ridiculous, right?
It must be.
It's like astronomical. But the ability for a parent to tell their child, hey, listen, just ask questions. Just ask, like learn, because we're all sponges. So at the end of the day, give us the opportunity to just be exposed to information.
That's all it is.
Tell me about that experience then. So you were working in B2B sales. How long was that? Like, what was that experience like for you personally?
Yeah, so I did that for 1 year, became one of their top sellers actually.
Okay.
Just through doing one thing. So I will impart this on anyone who is starting in sales or anything out there and you're not provided leads, you're not provided anything by the company, or you're just starting out. Find an online publication that has news about your target audience. Okay. That's number one.
So tip number one, if you don't know what to do in sales as you jump in, find an online publication that targets your avatar.
That talks about what your avatars are doing.
Okay.
So for instance, back then there was an online publication called BevNet.
BevNet, okay.
And what BevNet would do is BevNet would say whenever a beverage company expanded into 800 new stores, they dropped the news.
Okay.
Whenever a company hired a new marketing director, they dropped the news. So all I would do at 18 years old was I would go through this every morning. I would find every contact that I can who was reasonable. I would call every single one of them and email every single one of them. All I would email them was literally, hey, I saw that this is going on. I'm not sure if you already have someone or not that's helping you with your marketing within the stores, but we've been around for 60 plus years and have been doing this with companies X, Y, and Z, named competitors. Open to a conversation.
Interesting. So you had a preset frame in mind of how you were actually going to approach the prospects that you uncovered in this online publication. And then you nurtured them. You went through the process of going through, connecting, et cetera.
Nurtured.
Okay.
So that was the foundation of how I learned.
Okay.
But going back to the story, if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
So after a year of doing that, or after about 3 months in, I decided to start my first for-profit company while I was still working that job.
Okay.
So that became my Knights.
Okay.
And it was taking the same exact mission from the nonprofit and converting that to a software that I could profit on, which sounds weird.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Help me to understand it better.
So it was called Tutor Direct.
Tutor Direct, okay.
And this was back in 2016. And what it did was you had tutors who were independent contractors. They had their reviews, their testimonials, what their specialties were. They had tests to get reviewed to come onto the application. And then students could come on, view anyone's availabilities, book people right then and there if they were online and available. And inside the tutoring session, you had an interactive whiteboard, kind of like a Zoom video screening, audio recording, chat. You can upload images.
And you built that out yourself?
So I didn't develop it.
Okay.
I learned very early on. If you can build the pictures of what you want a software to be, of what you want something to be, and you can create an animated video with pictures.
Okay.
You can get people signing up to be on a wait list or to show interest.
Interesting. Okay.
You get enough interest and enough people on a wait list, raising angel capital is very easy.
Okay. Okay. Let's definitely explore that a bit more. So you went through the process of saying, okay, I identify that there's a need in the community for X. You had a vision of what X would look like, the solution, if you will, for X. You started to build that out through some sort of animation so that people can get an idea as to what it would be, and then sign up for interest. Okay. And then you went to the marketplace to get it designed.
So yeah, before I got it designed,
Okay.
once I got enough interest, I went into a local pitch competition
Okay.
and won the local pitch competition for a couple $1,000
Okay.
using the numbers that I had backed up with.
Right.
Because that's what people care about, but most people go into pitch competitions just with an idea and what the TAM, SAM, SOM looks like.
Okay.
So what we did instead, we had the metrics, we got that in the door. I used that to put down for the development team and to get the website, LLC, everything done,
Okay.
and put down the initial deposit, negotiate it with the development team.
Okay.
From there, just kept on adding more and more waitlist and talking to as many angel investors as I can, friends and family, anyone like that. Eventually, I found one who put in just the amount that covered the rest of the development fees and enough to market for a month, basically.
Okay.
Just enough.
Okay.
And by the end of us getting the software built, we had an offer right after our beta launch. And being 18 years old, I took it. But this was after I'd gone back to college, so I skipped forward a bit.
Okay.
I ended up going back after a year, and college made me they said, you can come back, you need to do the entrepreneurship major
Okay.
because of the business, and I had won
Right.
one of their pitch competitions.
Okay.
So I'd been coached through how to do all of this, and that's a big thing for me is mentorship.
Okay. So I want to make
Back
sure
to-
that the
yeah.
audience hasn't lost track. So we're in an environment where you separated from school, you went in and learned a significant amount of things about sales itself. You cut your teeth there. You eventually returned to school, and in that environment, you learned about the process of pitching and the process of potentially getting seed capital, venture capital, whatever it may be, angel investors. You learned how to do that through an education environment, but you also had other mentors that helped you too, right? So tell me a little bit more about that, because I think that's critically important.
Yeah. So there's a couple. So first is when I originally was starting the business, I reached out to an old friend of my parents that I had met just growing up. And this is a big thing that not a lot of people do,
Okay.
which is whenever people get into business, they never ask the friends of their parents that they met to see if they could help in any capacity.
Right.
So I called one of them up who I respected as an entrepreneur. He ended up being on Forbes Business Council now.
Okay.
And took a tech company public. So I was like, hey, I'm building this. I have no clue what I'm doing. And once he gave me some direction and I took his direction, he ended up being the angel investor.
Wow. Okay.
So
So tap the resources you have.
tap the resources you have, number one, especially people who are willing and open to help.
Right.
And so he would give me the advice that I needed in order to set up the business correctly, in order to build out the development, how to negotiate that with the development company.
Okay.
He helped me with my pitch deck, how to bring it to market, everything like that. And everything he said, I just took and ran with.
Okay.
And that was the first mentor.
Okay.
Once I went back to school, I ended up selling the company for way too little. Way too little.
I've had a lot of conversations with
Way
business owners
too
about
little.
that. So
It's literally check tutors.
yeah.
Way
Oh, my
too
goodness.
little.
Okay. So tell me a bit before we get into the sale of it. You launched it.
So we actually only did a beta release where we
beta
had 60
release.
people come on.
Okay.
And one of the people that were part of the last pitch competition that I did was an investor in Chag very heavily,
Okay.
which was the tutoring company and had connections to them.
Okay.
So he particularly was like, I'll give you this amount to buy it, to just buy the software, the IP, everything like that.
Okay.
I was 18 years old.
didn't
I
know
was
any
just
better.
I was just living in a 3/4 way house a couple
Right.
months back. I just came back to school.
And it was a ton of money, and you're like, hey, yeah, let me just take it.
Like, let me do. I mean, it was high five figures, but it was like
Yeah, it was-
at that time in my life.
Absolutely, that's a ton of money.
That's
It's
a
all about
ton of
perspective.
money.
All about perspective. So you sold that business.
Mm-hmm.
What was next?
So next, I spent about 3 to 6 months, honestly, looking back and just reflecting on where I was. Didn't do much work. I did the sales thing on part-time after that, just whenever people came to me through relationships I already had, and really got into school and took a STEM entrepreneurship and commercialization major.
Okay.
So all I did was I was given a background, just enough to be dangerous is what I call it,
Okay.
in engineering, technology, coding, science. So I have enough to understand it and enough to be able to direct people or
Right.
consult
Consult.
or direct a project. And so I took time to learn that. That was my entire semester there.
Okay.
After I learned it, I started my next business.
Okay.
And the next business actually didn't go much of anywhere,
Okay.
but it was where I met my next mentor.
Oh, okay.
So the next business, I set out to create straws that glowed in the dark when a drug was detected in someone's drink, a different color for every classification, and they were biodegradable.
Okay.
So I got into the science of it, teamed up with the biochemistry school at my college, and created everything. I didn't know that FDA approval was something you needed to go through.
Yep.
No one ever got hurt.
No, but still.
But still.
Interacting with food or beverage, exactly.
Yeah, and so I got my first mentor in that, who was a person who was big in technology, engineering, science, and that side of it. He ran the National Magnetic Field Laboratory for the DoD.
Wow.
And he was a tech entrepreneur.
Okay.
He blew my mind. He was like 35 years old.
Mm.
And he was my professor. And then at the end of the class, I was like, can we go to a lunch twice a week? I want you to mentor me.
Okay.
And he said yes. And that's another thing people don't do. They just don't ask.
Yeah.
Which is something you get in sales.
Yeah. You have to be willing to ask the right questions of the right people.
You have to be confident enough to walk up to people and just start a conversation knowing they're human too. And confident enough to just ask.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about that then. From a logistics standpoint, when you're asking the right questions, how do you go about doing that? How do you go about asking those right questions?
So I think everyone has their own way that they speak. And when you go to choose your mentor, when you go to talk to people, you're going to resonate with the people on your frequency. And so it's more so a mindset, I think.
Yeah.
Where when you walk into asking someone a question, everyone has this fear of rejection, this fear of no.
Right.
That's the worst that can happen.
Exactly.
Like, that's the worst. Whatever you're thinking in your head, you say it or you don't say it. It's like Michael Jordan said, it was Deion Waiters.
Okay.
He played for the Heat for a little, and he went 0 for 31 game. And in the post game conference, he said, "I'd rather go 0 for 30 than 0 for 9."
Right.
Because if I go 0 for 9, that means I lost my confidence and I stopped shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the point at the end of the day where 31 might go in.
Okay.
But you can't have that fear of rejection. You have to be okay with no.
The concept of confidence is born through discipline, just doing it over and over and over again, so that confidence comes almost naturally. But it's also backed up by competence. When you understand something fully, it's easy to be confident about it. Mm-hmm. How did you build up the confidence to be able to ask the types of questions that you're asking? Like, where did the competence come from? Was it something that was it from the environment of going through the sales and dealing with individuals that way? Was it something that was taught to you by your parents? Like, what
I think it's a combination of both my upbringing.
Okay.
In high school, I was top 7 in the nation in public forum debate.
Okay.
So anything about public policy, I was literally debating around the country on it and cross-examining people who knew what they were talking about.
Okay.
With just direct questions. Okay. So that kind of helped me very much with it.
Okay.
And then the last thing is just sales. Like being in sales, running a business too, one and the same too when you start.
Right.
So I think when you're looking at it that way, it's needed.
Yeah, it's a necessity.
You get it over time. And frankly, if someone's living on sales or living on starting their own business, you're gonna get that instinct.
Right. I get it. But the business then that you were launching then, the straw business itself, it didn't go anywhere.
No, so the straw business, we were able to bring it to market, patent it. We created an entire polymer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
We used what cops swab cars with when they want to check what substance. We embedded that into a biodegradable polymer.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You still have that patent?
No.
You sold it?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Every time I did anything that was patentable or IP, had anything to it, that was one of the things I learned from that mentor for the straw company, was anytime I came up with it, once I had the design in mind, got the design patent.
Okay.
Once the utility was there, then get the utility patent.
Okay.
Because regardless of if the company goes under, companies will buy those patents.
Exactly. Still value. It's an asset. What was next after that then?
So after that, I then started Keurig machines.
Oh, yeah.
We need to change that out. I'll get you one of my old models.
Okay.
So basically, I started a competitor to Keurig machines.
Okay.
The amount of K-Pods that are sold around the globe each year can wrap around the world and stack 7 times over.
Wow. I didn't
They
know
are
that.
only 2% of them end up recycled or actually reduced in the right way. And it's the number one single-use plastic that contributes to our waste in our landfills and our oceans.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
it's interesting to know that.
It's
You
weird.
came up with a solution to that.
Yeah. So essentially, I came up with, we called it Point Zero.
Point zero. Okay.
Was the name of the company. So the point was, let's get us all to the point of zero waste.
Okay.
And it was called EcoBrew was the product. What EcoBrew was it was Keurig machine basically, but all of the coffee that came was in aluminum canisters, making it so that it was recyclable every time and it was the right size for it.
Okay.
The coffee, instead of going to large corporations, was sourced from artisan coffee makers in Ecuador, and then they were getting money back for each one that they sent over.
Okay.
And then it also did an instant cup of cold brew coffee, which
Really?
Keurig doesn't do. So we patented that, and I started to bring it to market, raise money for it. Partnered up with a guy who runs Red Eye Coffee and Red Eye Foundation, large charity and large coffee business. And he became my mentor in there, in the coffee space, and in creating this. And then I graduate college, and as we are set to launch, 2 things happen. 1, there's an offer for the patent.
Okay.
And 2, because we ran a hilarious ad. So the Keurig founder
Yes.
left the company years ago.
Okay.
He has an interview where it says, where he says word for word, I regret ever starting Keurig because of the waste that's created now. I ran an ad of just him saying that, bashing Keurig, with me going on, here's your alternative.
Wow.
So we got an offer.
Yes, understandable.
And then the second thing that happened was a SaaS company demoed me on their software.
Okay.
And after seeing the power in it, because I saw it being very powerful, and I was kind of ready.
You were ready for
my
something
heart
next.
wasn't in the coffee. I love coffee, but my heart wasn't in it.
Okay.
But at the end of the demo, I give an objection that you've definitely never heard either.
Okay.
I say, yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. Instead of buying it, let's build out your sales team. I'll be up there in your HQ next week. Are you looking at hiring sales?
Oh, yeah.
They go, yes, we are. So I end up exiting that company, Point Zero one, and fly out in the second month, in the second month of COVID lockdown.
Oh, goodness.
I fly to Indianapolis and move there from Miami.
Wow.
And on a commission-only role
Okay.
at a startup with just the founding team and 1 other employee.
Wow. So not only do you have sales skills, not only are you confident because of the competence you've developed, you're a risk taker, because that was a risk.
Oh, I'm always a risk taker. I remember my first venture into finance was trading options.
Okay. Okay.
My second was
Okay. So not only you're a risk taker, you're a big risk taker. Okay, I like it.
But yeah, my second was a crypto arbitrage in 2017.
Okay.
So
okay.
since then, we've gotten a lot more conservative.
Okay.
But always been a risk taker.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that risk then. You jumped ship from Miami to heading to Indianapolis. Definitely a different climate.
Oh, way different. I'd never seen snow.
Exactly. So this is definitely something that you're experiencing. What was that like? So because you've left the startup realm to return back to sales. What was that like?
Yeah, it was really cool. So the reason why I liked it too was when talking to the founders, it was just something that when they spoke, I was like, these guys have vision, these guys have drive, they're putting in the action. And I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And it was there for sure. And it still is. And so basically, I flew out there, and they hired me on as one of the first commission-only reps. I started with 2 other people.
Okay.
They put us up in an Airbnb.
Okay.
We had an office with bleach stains on the floor, some holes in the wall. It was nice, but we had an office.
Yeah.
And it was COVID selling. So it was my first venture into LinkedIn automation. So it was a LinkedIn automation platform. As you know, I do a bit of now still.
Exactly.
So I saw the value in it. It was number one. It was the place where people with money were online. It was where people were B2B. It was where people were networking because you couldn't go to events. And so right away, I jumped into it and just started full cycle selling.
Okay.
Using their software, using email automation, finding anyone I can and making 200 calls a day. And within the span of by the end of the second month, I was seeing commission checks of 6, 8, 10K a week.
Wow.
And my mind was blown. And because I was performing so well, they said, okay, take over and run 4 of the salespeople. Help us out with how we should position this ad in marketing. And they started to give me more hats and responsibilities. And I loved it. I didn't care that there wasn't a change in pay, as some people would. I didn't care. Instead, I was saying, you're giving me all the experiences. You're teaching me all these things by having hands-on experience, which is what I wanted at the end of the day in my first job like that. Eventually, we end up growing, and as we grow, they just put me in charge of more things. So I end up becoming their VP of revenue throughout time, train about 80 salespeople in the organization, end up creating our revenue systems and processes, having someone implement it into technology, start speaking around the country at events for them, and they grew my brand fully.
Right.
And it was like, I strongly recommend this for anyone starting out in like a commission-only sales role. For anyone getting into sales, don't go to a company because they have a great OTE or they have a cool product. Go to a company because the founding team seems like they actually want to support you. Because that's going to be the biggest thing for starting someone's career, I think.
Well, you keyed in on a topic, and I don't want to like just gloss over it, because I do think it's important. When you look at youth today that are just getting started, just jumping into, whether it's into corporate America, whether it's into starting a company or working for a startup, whatever it may be, I've constantly been talking with people about this concept of being willing to put in the sweat equity without necessarily getting a return immediately on that equity, because you're compensated in so many different ways with those experiences, like just the knowledge base, the network that you can build. It's not always about dollars and cents, is it?
No, 100%. I was at 23 years old, I was speaking to Brad Lee's Closer School Live Mastermind.
Right.
I was being flown down to help Grant Cardone build out his systems for his sales team, and I was 23 years old.
And none of that would have happened if you would have been holding off for a paycheck.
None of it.
Because that particular company would not have been able to compensate you for doing those things.
Fully bootstrapped, probably not.
Exactly. So when you look at some of the most amazing experiences you've had in business so far, it wasn't always tied to a paycheck. It was tied to the experience.
Almost never. The only jobs I've ever had with other people were commission only, based on performance. And the only things outside of that have been, if I don't perform, I don't eat.
Yeah. Okay, so there's some motivation there.
So it's always that way.
Okay.
Which I personally think that's how pay should be in all organizations.
Okay.
I think, for example, if you have someone who's doing customer success, pay them per success session, and then give them a bonus based on how they're doing from the client reviews.
Right.
I don't think that's just how I think. I think performance is what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, you and I are very much aligned there. I'm a huge advocate of meritocracy and merit-oriented pay. Obviously, there's a lot of rules in the United States with regard to compensating people, but if I could compensate everyone based on just bonus structure, how much value do you add to the bottom line, and compensate people based on value, that would definitely be the approach I would prefer to take. When you look at what you're doing now, so the transition from that experience that you were in, how did that set the groundwork for today?
Yeah, that whole experience is what I do today, actually.
Okay.
So how they gave me the tools, the technology, whenever we would look at new softwares for our business, we would say, Danny, take a look at it.
Okay.
Whenever we would say we want to create a new marketing campaign or sales campaign, Danny come up with a couple.
Okay.
When we wanted to set up anything new, it would have my mind on it. And so I started to become obsessed with training sales, with creating outbound prospecting that can be automated and sound like a human. I started to become obsessed with making automation sound human and training salespeople. Because if you can start conversations with exactly your qualified audience and you know how to move them in a straight line to where you need to be and where they need to get, you're going to be golden.
Yeah.
So they taught me that entire process without me even knowing that was what was happening throughout the time.
A Karate Kid moment, wax on, wax off, and you were learning how to do the moves just by being in that environment.
Exactly.
When you look at that, then, if you were to measure the thing that moved the needle most for you to where you are today, what would it have been?
Environment.
Environment.
It's always going to be environment. They say you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're not the average. Mm-hmm. It's not a median, it's a mean.
Oh, okay.
And so it's about who you spend your time around the most taking down. So for example, when I went from being in Miami in college, the businesses grew, but I got to 5 figures high.
Right.
Nothing much. And then when I went here, I was surrounded by these guys who had these large visions, these guys who were putting in the activities every day. 6 a.m., we're in the office. I'm going to beat you there.
Exactly, right.
It's the competition. It's meeting the people that, at 8 p.m. who are 23, 22 years old aren't playing Call of Duty, but are instead, at a networking event meeting the business community movers and shakers. So being in that community and just being there, if I wasn't doing those same actions, I felt like a slouch because of who was around me most.
Okay. So you're basically being lifted up by the collective desire to improve. Everyone around you is always looking to up-level themselves. You're looking then to up-level yourself in order to just be competitive. And then I love the concept of understanding that it's your network that directly impacts your net worth.
Oh, 100%.
Okay. So looking at that then, in your current environment with your existing business, what does a typical day look like for you?
Typical day. So first thing in the morning, I used to start working at about 7:30 and work through the day. I was a workaholic.
Okay.
And I realized something. I actually watched a video on it, and it changed my whole way of thinking about it. I think it was Ed Milet.
Okay.
And it was something where it was about being proactive versus reactive in your day. Who dictates your day? When you wake up, is the first thing that you do check your messages, check your email, check Instagram? What do I need to do today?
Right.
Or is the first thing that you do is take care of yourself and then be proactive instead of reactive throughout your whole day? And the first thing being, okay, I'm going to start my day with this because I love it.
Okay.
We'll get into that when we get to it. So I start every morning. I don't start until 9 a.m. now. I take the first 2.5, 3 hours of my day to myself.
Okay.
Go for a walk, play some basketball, shoot around, because that gets the body flowing.
Yes.
9 a.m. to 9:45 is kind of my morning block where I'm like organizing my entire day, setting out my top 3 priorities, outlining what the subtopics are in each of them, and seeing who on my team I either need to set up time with, or if there's anything urgent I need to do as well with any client.
Okay.
From there, and I'm also setting up like content for the day.
Okay.
So rest of my morning now is mainly going to be looking at 2 things. One, talking with the team, making sure that everything's on pace, doing what we need to do. And the second piece of it, I don't book many meetings in my morning.
Okay.
I leave my morning so that no one can book it through my calendar. I have to be the one who books my mornings.
Okay.
So these are normally either closing calls, these are, networking people that I met maybe the previous day or something like that. This is something where I'm choosing it.
Okay.
Or maybe talking with my financial advisor, I'm doing something like that.
Okay.
Afternoon is fully meetings.
Right.
Afternoon is whole day, we're stacked, and it's going to go sales calls, client meetings if I need to. Hopefully the team does that. I'm at the point where I have salespeople booking appointments.
Oh, okay.
Which is what we teach people.
So you're doing setters.
But we haven't teach the setters to close yet.
Okay.
So I'm still, unfortunately, the one closing right now.
Okay.
But hopefully we'll be out of that shortly.
Okay.
That's what we're trending towards in February.
Okay.
And then we've got nighttime. Typically, once I'm done, read a book.
Okay.
Read like a chapter of my book. I'm reading Sapiens right now.
Oh, great book.
Rereading.
Book.
It's my
Great
fourth time reading it.
Yeah.
Homo Deus is great too. And then nighttime, it's either going to be talk with family, go to dinner with family or close friends. And nighttime I really reserve just to see family, see close friends, and relax.
When you look at the experience you have with clients then, what are you typically helping them with these days?
So these days I'm helping with 3 major things.
Okay.
And I'll explain in terms of what they're feeling based on how we help.
Okay.
So the first one is the person who's feeling like falls into 2 categories, the first person. It's either they feel like they have this paralysis to starting conversations in their business.
Okay.
Which is something that most founders might not feel themselves, but it is something that's very common.
Okay.
Where they know they're the expert in what they do, they know they can do good work, but they have this paralysis when it comes to talking to random people, and they'd rather talk to friends and see what friends can introduce them to who.
Okay.
So the first is that paralyzed founder entrepreneur.
Okay.
The second is going to be that person who is all day trying to bring in new business all day for their business to get it off the ground,
Okay.
and doesn't actually have the time to do the work that they need to do to grow the business.
Okay.
So for those people, what we're doing, which is the beginning stage, is we're putting in a lead generator.
Okay.
So what that means, we work with B2B founders. So you're talking to your coaches, your advisors, your SaaS companies, your everything like that.
Okay.
And so with those people, we're putting in a done for you. We are positioning their brand online on LinkedIn. There's 870 million people on there. Average income of a user is $72,000. Instagram, $6,000. I'm going to go with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So
That's where the money is.
it's where the money is. And so we help people to position their brand on there, make their profile a conversion mechanism.
Okay.
Once we've done that, we target their exact target audience. So free tip for everyone here.
Okay.
For anyone watching, listening, you could use something called a Boolean search on LinkedIn
Okay.
to find anyone you want. So if I was to put in quotation marks, owner, it would now show me everyone who identifies as owner on there. If I was to, outside of the quotation marks, put and in capital letters, and then in quotation marks write marketing, and then and again with quotation marks football, it'll now show me everyone who says football somewhere in their profile who's the owner of a marketing agency. I can filter that down in any way that I want.
Okay.
So we teach people how to target on there and really look at commonalities with your target audience so that you can build a brand that's engaged with and converts to revenue, because that's what we all want at the end of the day.
100%. If you're going to engage in anything, it should be revenue generating activity. Now, you mentioned a phrase that I don't want to gloss over either. You said conversion, making your LinkedIn profile a conversion mechanism. Help me understand what you mean specifically by that phrase.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people, when you're on their LinkedIn, what you're going to see is they have their headline, maybe say, I'll use owner at Scale Up, CEO at Scale Up. That'll be their whole thing.
Okay.
They might have something else, their entrepreneur or something else.
Right.
And then they'll have their about section that's like written in third person with all these big blocks of text and resume style writing. It doesn't work.
Right.
Instead, what we help them to do with their profile, and again, free game, is your headline, number one, is the first thing that anyone sees with your name when you post, when you message them, when there is a connection request. Mm-hmm. What's that mean? Just like any other outreach, you need to have an attention grabber right there.
Right.
So, for example, for me, instead of it being CEO at Scale Up, it says, I introduce extraordinary people to extraordinary people. Everyone loves that. What's your value driver?
Right.
Let's put that first.
Okay.
Second, you can put a fun fact about you so people see your personality. And last is a CTA, call to action. So mine, for example, says, want to get introduced to 60 plus people guaranteed in your ICP a month? DM me.
Okay.
So that's like a beginning. Your about section should be your personal story. If you're running your business, you've become an expert in it.
Right.
Let's talk about how that happened through your story so people can resonate with not just your business, but you, because people buy from people.
Yes. I love it. When you look at the next step then, because you said there were three different personalities, if you will, that you help, or feelings, if you will, that you help with. You addressed the two of them. What's the third one then?
So the third one is we've got the leads coming in. I'm having, and the person saying, I'm having trouble nurturing them, I'm having trouble following up with them because there's volume.
Yes.
Where it's more so, okay, well, you have your lead generator, and after you have that, well, the next thing that any business needs in technology to grow and scale is going to be something to consolidate those leads, filter your contacts, see your pipeline where people are, and be able to automate different correspondences or actions happening based on where someone is in your buying process after that first conversation.
Okay.
So that's when we'll implement a CRM for companies and omni-channel automation. So what that means is we'll put in a place where everyone that you're talking to in business, you'll be able to see them filtered by
in one location.
In one location, filtered by how many times they've opened your email.
Wow.
Filtered by when was your last time that you had any activity with them, plus what stage of my buying process are they in. Wow. And we can set up email automation with that, LinkedIn automation with that, to make it so that if someone's opened my email 3 times in the last 7 days and we've had at least one meeting in the last month task me to call that person.
Wow. You got to love technology. I
Gotta
mean,
love it.
it's so I talk about essentially 4 ways to scale a business. And there's really 4 levers. The first is labor, like hands and feet in the business, obviously taking you out of doing what is non-revenue generating activity. Maybe it should be at the very least, revenue supporting. And if you're doing anything in business that is neither revenue generating or revenue supporting, you should jettison that thing you're doing because you're in business to make revenue. So anything that doesn't do either of those 2 things, get rid of it. But after scaling through labor, scaling through code is important because you use the labor in order to effectively create the systems that work. And then once you know they work, then you can use code technology to enhance the people who are implementing the systems.
And what you just said there is very imperative, which is you use the people to build out the system for it. Because at the end of the day, it's people, process, technology, and anything in business.
Absolutely.
And you need to prove it with manual process and people before you can automate.
I 100% agree with that. And then once you've effected that, you have your process in place with the humans doing it. You have the humans enhanced with the technology that supports the processes and procedures that you're operating. Then you can go to other people's money, OPM. You can leverage capital.
Yep.
Because then you could double down on the people and the technology. Then finally, you want to be ensuring that you're leveraging your audience, which is essentially what you're also really helping with. You're giving the entrepreneurs that you work with the opportunity to connect with more through cultivating the audiences they have, and whether that's on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever it may be, you're effectively giving them that opportunity to scale up to the next level through the audience that they're connecting with.
Yep.
That's amazing. When you look at your journey, it's definitely been long and winding. There's been some ups, there's definitely been some downs.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
So what's next? My main goal is to get back into philanthropy and nonprofits eventually.
Okay.
That's number one. The second one is I want to give back to entrepreneurs, so I want to be an angel or venture capitalist.
Okay.
I think I want to play in the angel space.
Interesting. Okay.
Because
Why? Help me understand that.
Number one, risky.
Okay. Yeah, risk taking.
Going back to our other conversation.
Okay.
Number two, those are the people that need the most direction.
Yes.
And that's where I want to have the most affect.
Okay.
So that's where I want to be. In order to do that, I've already laid out my route to get there.
Oh, okay.
So my route to get there is the whole way that Scale Up operates today is we are your one-stop shop for the sales technology and the processes. We fell on our face so that you don't have to.
Okay.
So what we put in place there is people come to us, we get them discounts on the softwares, and beyond just the discounts, the software companies give us MRR in the back end.
Okay.
So one, it's building easy, quick MRR through software and technology that's actually making impact.
Right.
Once that MRR is high enough, it's turning that into, well, what's the next thing that holds value? Real estate.
Real estate.
It's turning that one into real estate, and then going from the real estate into being able to leverage that into anything for collateral for investment vehicles and for VC.
Awesome. Well, Danny, what I like to do is, if you wouldn't mind, I every guest that I have on here, I like to jump down a little bit of a thought exercise. So if you'll indulge me for a minute, I'd love to take you on that journey. What I want you to imagine for a moment is that you have an ability to go back in time and to visit with a younger version of Danny. What I'd love to know is, what version of Danny did you go back to? And you have an ability to share one thing with that version of Danny, what would the thing you'd be sharing?
So the first thing that comes to mind is actually really weird.
Okay.
The first thing that comes to mind is going back to me the night that I got arrested and kicked out of college.
Okay.
And telling me this is good.
Okay. Okay.
Telling me this is good. Because everything in life happens for a specific reason. And if that never happened, that negative action never happened, I would probably be a finance bro on Wall Street right now. And like hating life.
Unfulfilled.
And that's the number one thing. If we're talking about going back and giving advice, that's the biggest advice. I wouldn't change the trajectory that I've taken because it's brought me to where I am.
Wonderful. Well, there's a second part to this exercise.
Okay.
I want you to imagine now for a moment that a future version of Danny has now come back in time into this moment that we're in, sharing this company at the moment, stands next to you and has the opportunity to share something with you, what does he share with you?
Wow. It's got to give me a second here. That what you achieve in work is not your success or your achievement, but rather remember it's the people that you can impact and the people around you, making sure that you do right by them. That's going to give you the real fulfillment. Because sometimes I have lapses in my mind where I forget that.
That's deep. It's not your success. It's the success of those around you. I love that. Because again, we are just as business owners, if you're not a solopreneur, even if you're a solopreneur, it's still the people around you. Yeah, it's still the people around you. But definitely within a business where you have team, having that team be an environment that can come to bear to help and to move you forward, it's definitely their win. And every good leader recognizes that. It's not a solo thing. Even if you're a solopreneur, it's the team that moves you forward. So that's definitely profound. But an earlier version of Danny got some advice, and the present version of Danny got some advice. I don't want the audience to feel left out. So what's one additional nugget of wisdom that you'd love to share with the audience that they can take and say, hey, listen, I'm glad I invested some time to learn more about Danny today?
Yeah. So one additional nugget that I can give to everyone is that thought that you have in your mind right now that you keep coming back to every night when you're laying in bed, that you should do this, you should do that. Stop thinking and go do it right now. Mm-hmm. Take that risk. Jump on the flight one way to Indiana and go move there in the snow during COVID. Mm-hmm. Take that risk. Go jump on the flight to Medellin and live 3 months there because you want to experience a new place. You've been thinking about starting your business and doing it. Great. Just start talking to people about it and start seeing interest.
Yeah, action is what leads to outcome.
Action does everything. If you're not, I say this all the time. You know how people say luck is when preparedness meets opportunity?
Yes.
I say luck is something different. So what I say luck is luck is when the consistency of your actions sees results unexpectedly.
Ah, okay. I like that. I like that a lot. Danny, I just want to say thank you for being willing to come here, share so authentically with us, give me an opportunity to learn more about your story. I knew a little bit about it, but now I know so much more. The wisdom that you have to share is amazing, and I'm really excited to see what the next couple of years look like for you, what you're going to be doing, and how you're going to be doing it, because I know I'm going to be able to learn a lot from that as well. So thank you so much for being here. And guys, you have just amazed. I know you're amazed because the experience you've just had learning from this gentleman is one that you can take action steps on right now. He dropped a bunch of nuggets of wisdom. Hopefully you paid attention. And if you didn't, rewind, listen to it again, because you're going to want to put into practice what he shared with you. Again, my name is Edward Collins. This has been another episode of Entrepreneur Unleashed. And please, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, be sure to hit that thumbs up, because it not only helps me with the algorithm, it also helps you, because it's going to tell the algorithm the things that you want to see and share it with you right away. Good luck. I wish you well on your journey. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Bye for now. That was awesome.
Yeah, bro.
That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Your story is amazing.